I have to wear mouth braces on the top and bottom. I break teeth.
Live from the Willie Nelson and Friends Museum Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Music is Funny. Musicians talking to comedians about music and comedy. With your hosts, Raelyn Nelson and Jonathan Bright.
I'm still smoking, I'm so high, I keep toking, I'm drunk, but I'm still drinking too.
Welcome back to Music is Funny. I'm Raelyn Nelson.
And I'm Jonathan Bright from the Raelyn Nelson Band, back with another ridiculous and unnecessary intro. And today's guest is Terry Fator.
Terry Fator.
All right.
Hey, thanks for joining us, Terry.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Raelyn, and this is my co-host, Jonathan Bright. We call him JB.
Nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you. And I have Winston here too. Hello. So he's ready.
Good. I was hoping you would have something. Okay, so the way we start every podcast is, what is the first music you remember loving as a kid?
You know, my dad was very big on variety. So he had a ton of things. I mean, a ton of different styles of music. So we went from everything from big band to religious to early rock, like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And of course, I was a big fan of Michael Jackson and Donny Osmond because I was young and I was a singer. And so those probably were my first impressions. You know, people like Wayne Newton and Dark Shade, Darling, Dark, when I was a little kid. So, yeah. So that was really my influences were just very, very diverse.
Where did you sing?
What's that? Where did I sing?
Yeah, where did you said you were a singer. Where did you first notice you sing and all that? Church?
Yeah, I have. Well, back, you know, I'm in my 50s. So back then we had these little bitty record players that would do 45, 78, and 33 and a third. And I had a ton of 45s. And so I would sit and listen to them at 2 and 3 years old. And I would sing these things. And my very first memory is actually standing on a table at my church when I was about 3. I might have been even less than 3, singing a song. And I heard people cheering and laughing. And I distinctly remember thinking, I like this feeling. I want to do this for my life. This is what I want to do.
So let's get in, because you started, this is long before you started doing I don't know if it was long before, but you were a singer in like touring bands, right?
I was, yes. We did I kind of did, we were janitors. My parents had a janitorial business, and that's really where I honed my singing abilities. I would mop floors and clean toilets and vacuum, and I would listen to the radio. And unlike what most people would do, just singing along, I wanted to practice my ventriloquism because I really wanted to be a professional ventriloquist. So I'd be like vacuuming, and I would do it without moving my lips to be like, don't stop believing, hold on to that feeling, you know, that kind of thing. So I just learned how to do it so I could practice my ventriloquism and sing along to the radio. And then, of course, when I learned how to drive, I didn't want people to see that I was singing because, you know, people look goofy when they're singing in their car. So I would do it without moving my lips. And that was another way for me to practice doing it without moving my lips. So after the janitorial business, I was probably 20 years old when I joined a band. And then I started my own band. I did this for about, maybe 19. And I did that for a year. And we did drug and alcohol awareness programs and bullying programs for teenagers in high schools and junior highs. And then I started my own band and decided that was a lot more fun than being a janitor. So we were together for about 15 years. I was the lead singer, but ventriloquism was always a big part of it. So we were kind of a country rock band when country rock was just becoming popular in the early 90s. And so we would do, and the thing is I could do these impressions. So we would go from Ozzy Osbourne to George Strait. And then I would do Def Leppard, and then I would do Randy Travis. And so I was doing all these, like, I would go from hard rock to country, and it was a lot of fun. And then about every 15 minutes, I'd pull out a puppet and have my puppet sing a song. So we were very popular in the country bar realm, and the fairs also. Fairs loved us.
So was it like an act, or was it like a cover band, but you were just so good at impressions that you sounded just like who you guys were covering? Or was it sort of an act along with it?
Well, that was kind of an evolving thing. And I didn't really know I was an impressionist until I was close to my 30s. I just would hear a song and I could, for some reason, sing it just like the original artist. It was just something I was really born with, this gift. And so I was maybe 28 years old, and I was in a bar. We were watching this local band with my guitar player, and the guy was just an awful singer. And I turned to my guitar player and I said, it really irritates me when these guys do this. Why doesn't he just sing it like the original artist? And my guitar player kind of looked at me funny and said, "You're the only person I've ever known in my entire life that can actually do that." And that's when I realized that I do something nobody else. I thought people were purposely trying to sound, have their own sound. So in probably 1991, we actually had Warner Brothers, Texas the Band was the name of my band, and we had Warner Brothers that were ready to sign us and wanted us to be like this band, a country rock band. And they put a groomer on the road with us. And he was with us for about 6 months. And I've never been more miserable because he wanted me to do it all in my own voice, which I had way more fun impersonating, Joe Elliott and impersonating Robert Plant. It was way more fun for me to do that. And then especially to be able to go straight into a George Strait song or a Garth Brooks song. That was just a blast. And people, to see the looks on people's faces where people would be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe he just did that." So for about 6 months, I tried to do stuff in my own voice and I just hated it. And they didn't want me to do ventriloquism. They didn't want us to do comedy. And so I basically told the guys, "Look, I'm not happy doing this. I want to be a comedy show, rock." And so we really turned it into a comedy cover band that we would do comedy skits. And of course I would bring out my puppets and we would do things. The puppets would flirt with ladies and in the audience and then sing a song to them. And that's where I found that I was having the most fun. So I don't think I would have made a good recording artist. I just wanted to be, I want to see people's faces when they're laughing at what I'm doing and smiling and enjoying what I'm doing. So I really was kind of born to be that comedian / entertainer / impressionist, singer, ventriloquist. So I love it all.
So listen, we got to back up to, I'm sure you got into ventriloquism probably at an early age because it seems like an odd thing for someone to pick up on. And I was just thinking about how you didn't, well, maybe I'm dumb about this, but it's not like you had 15 ventriloquists that you could go, "I like that guy," or "I like that." It seemed like Willie Tyler, I'm old enough to remember him, but it seemed like there was one every 25 years that everybody knew of. So how did you get into it? And what got you?
It was a complete accident. I was always doing every single year. I loved attention. So I love being on stage and I love when people give me attention. So every year I would do the school talent show. And every year I do something different. I remember one time I decided I wanted to be a hypnotist. And so I bought a book on hypnotism. I never could do it, which is interesting because later on in life when I was doing fairs, I actually became a professional stage hypnotist as well, just to bring in extra money. So it did work out for me. But I would do magic shows and then I would sing and I would dress up and do, a show tune or something. And so I always loved it. And every year there was a band and there were piano players and there were singers and there were magicians. And one day I kind of just stumbled on a book on ventriloquism in my school library. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this book and I'm going, "Wait a minute, there's no ventriloquists in our school. I'd be the only ventriloquist to do the school talent show. So this would be cool. I could do something different." So I checked the book out and I started practicing and I went home. And within 2-3 hours, I was able to say the whole alphabet without moving my lips. And then I was able to do some of the other things, like the boy thought of basketball and without moving my lips. And so I thought, this is kind of cool. I'll do this. So I went and bought a little puppet at Sears. And then when the book that I got was called Ventriloquism for Fun and Profit by Paul Winchell, who is one of those kind of iconic ventriloquists that was really popular in the 50s and 60s. And then you had your Edgar Bergen, who was maybe 20 years on the radio from the 30s to the 50s. And then you had Paul Winchell and Jimmy Nelson was big. He did a lot of stuff in the 50s and 60s as well. And then of course you remember Willie Tyler and then Jay Johnson came along. Do you remember the movie, the TV show Soap?
Oh yeah.
He was the ventriloquist.
Yeah. I forgot about
Jay
that.
Johnson. So my parents, I was only 12 or 10 or 12 when that came out. And it was such an adult themed type show. My parents wouldn't let me watch the show, but every time the ventriloquist came on, they would yell and I would run in and watch the ventriloquist so that I could kind of watch them. But, I'd had ventriloquists come to my school and church and they were always terrible. Even at 5 years old, I'm thinking, this guy's awful. And I knew they were awful. It wasn't like I was too young to realize that they were crappy ventriloquists. But I had also seen, TV shows and like you said, Willie Tyler And of course, I'd gotten records. I grew up. One of the things we did when we were doing janitorial work was there was an AM radio station all night long that would play old time radio shows. So I grew up listening to Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy on these radio shows that they would play overnight when our family's janitorial business had to work all night. And so I was very familiar with the art. And a lot of people don't realize, though, that ventriloquism is more about creating real characters that truly come alive than it is maybe moving your lips or other things. And there's not a lot of people. In fact, I think I'm the only one in the world that can actually do impressions of singers without moving my lips. And so I think I'm the only one in the world that does that. There are a lot of singing ventriloquists now. I think I started that whole trend, though.
That's insane, being able to do other people's singing without moving your lips. Insane.
Thanks. People ask me how I do it, and honestly, the answer is I have no idea. It was really something I was just born with. So
it's crazy.
Now, did you ever write any songs?
Yes. In fact, I've got a couple of albums on that you can get on Amazon Music and also iTunes. The one that is 100% my own original songs that I wrote every single song is called Horses in Heaven. And I released that around the year 2000. And then maybe 2010, I think, I released an album called It Starts Tonight. And there's only one song on there that I wrote, but the rest of them are just songs. I hired a Nashville guy to help me put out kind of a country rock album. It's a lot of fun. I had a great time doing it.
Is it comedy music that you write, or do you?
No, just normal country music.
Cool.
It's kind of funny to listen to, because I was trying to, I grew up in Texas, so I used to have a Texas accent. And I was trying to sing in that Southern accent, and it sounds so weird and forced on me. But it's really not. It's actually, that's how I grew up. That was my old accent. When I went to college, I took drama and television and radio, and they really taught me how to not pigeonhole myself with an accent. I mean, I can bring it on. I have a country puppet that talks like this. He's got my old Texas accent. That's my country western puppet.
So when you were recording these records, do you ever find yourself, depending on the way the song is going, slipping into another character that you used to do and going, this is a country, and like without even thinking about it, getting Clint Black or something in there? Oh,
without a doubt. Yeah. It took me years to find my own voice. And I don't think I quite had, I came closest to it with It Starts Tonight, my album. And it's a great album. There are a lot of really good songs on it, but I think it's even since then I've been able to really find my own way of singing. But yes, it's very difficult for me not to slip into somebody else's voice, because it's just so natural. But the great thing is I really put the albums out for my own enjoyment, and for, if my fans like them, great. I have no desire to be like a recording artist, and if I did, I'd probably want to be like Weird Al and have just comedy albums. But I just do it because I enjoy doing it, and I can sing. I can actually sing, and I like doing it. So.
And you're in Vegas, right?
I am. Yes.
Are you aware that it's not Christmas time?
I knew you were going to ask me this. So this is great. And I did this on purpose. We're about to do a photo shoot for my upcoming Christmas show. So they asked us to redecorate our house, and I'm like, yes, I get to redecorate my house. So we got the house all decorated, and I think in a couple of weeks we're gonna bring some puppets, and actually we're gonna get some puppets on that, and we're gonna make it look like the puppets are decorating the tree. So
see, there you go, smart ass.
So what you're saying is, what we can do is, if we don't want to take our Christmas decorations down, we leave them up all year and just tell people we're doing a Christmas album and we need it.
That's exactly how you do it.
That's the only reason he's doing a Christmas album, so he didn't have to take his shit down.
That's right. That's right. So I even turned the lights on, because we don't have the lights on until then, and I turned the lights on so they'd be on for this interview.
Fantastic. No, I got to back up, because I'm still fascinated. Like as a ventriloquist, what is the path you take? Because like I said, do you do open mics? Do you do that path? Do you step into other outside, not like non-comedic clubs? Like it seems there's so few of you. How would you possibly know what to do?
It is really hard. In fact, up until I won America's Got Talent, it was almost impossible to get into any place. In fact, I had tried out for cruise ships. I had sent my stuff to cruise ships. I had sent my stuff, and I had done auditions for comedy clubs. I was turned down almost sight unseen, because they're like, we're not interested in ventriloquism, not interested in ventriloquism, not interested in ventriloquism. And then all of a sudden I go on America's Got Talent, win the thing. And then it's like, I cannot tell you how many countless ventriloquists have either started because of me or said, oh my gosh, you don't know, you made it. And then, of course, it wasn't just winning America's Got Talent, but becoming the very first evening headliner in Las Vegas history. And I've been here now 15 years, one of the top shows in Las Vegas. You know, people say, wow, you really have shown people that ventriloquism is a genuine method of entertainment for all ages and not just children. And up until I was on America's Got Talent, 100% of the time when people would say, what do you do for a living? And I'd say, well, I'm a ventriloquist. They'd say, oh, my kid would love you at his birthday, you know. And I'm like, nah, I mean, look, I'm not a dirty comedian at all, but I'm an adult comedian. In other words, my humor is really written for the adult intellect. And even when I was doing elementary schools, the principal and all of the teachers would come up to me and they would say, after the show, they'd say, this is the only time in the history of our school that an entertainer came in to entertain the kids and the adults enjoyed it even more than the kids did. Because it's like, I don't write for a children's type stuff. I write for the adult brain, a lot like the Muppets or like a Pixar movie. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things that kids love in a Pixar movie. There's a ton of stuff that the kids won't get. Not necessarily that it's dirty. It's just things that only adults experience, you know, and that's kind of what it is for me. And so to be able to have an evening headlining show as one of the top shows in Las Vegas for 15 straight years, no one's ever done that before, ever. I'm the only one ever. And so it really has opened that door. But you're absolutely right. Up until that point, it was almost impossible. And now the funny thing is when I tell people I'm a ventriloquist, they don't go, oh, my kids would love you. They're like, oh, that's awesome. Wow, that's really cool. But it was not cool when I was a kid, trust me. But although it was in a sense because I would always play jokes on people and I could make, you know, if I was getting bullied, I could make it sound like somebody was yelling my name and it would scare them, you know, and, you know, from a distance. And so it does come in handy. Don't get me wrong. And then, of course, when I'm going through security, if there's nobody there, I never do it if there are people behind me because, you know, people get irritated when they're in security. But if I'm by myself, as the thing is going through the x-ray machine, I'm like, let me out of here. Someone let me out. And I'm telling you, it's always hilarious. Always hilarious.
It's crazy. But it certainly sounds like it didn't happen overnight. How many years you had to have some brutal gigs as a ventriloquist? Because we talk about bands having a bad gig, you got 4 people there. A comedian bombs, you got that. But if you're standing up with a puppet and it's not going over, it had to be brutal.
You know, the good thing, no, you're absolutely right. However, I've never had a show like that. And the reason is when you sing, you've got guaranteed material that people are absolutely going to love, because when you're doing songs that everybody loves, and if I'm doing it in the voices of the people that they love, there's no possible way it can fail. And that's really, I mean, I'm not being arrogant. I'm just saying, I just happen to have a formula that, you know, even if my jokes are terrible, and trust me, I have written jokes that bombed. I've written routines that bombed, but as soon as I get into the music, people are digging it, you know? So it's like, it's really, I'm kind of, it's a blessing to do what I do, because I'm sort of insulated from a lot of the trauma that a lot of comedians might go, because I'm a singing ventriloquist. So,
and it does seem like you have a lot of tools in your tool chest to, you know, attack any or situations in front of you. You can sing. I mean, ventriloquism is almost like a magic act to me, like just watching somebody do it. And then if you're funny and can do it well, it just, you know, that's a lot of stuff you got in your back pocket.
Exactly. And it's illusion. I mean, and the great thing is if I'm bombing, you can make an entire routine, and I've done it before, where the puppet is ripping on me for not being able to write good jokes, you know? And it really works. And then of course you have I did 20 years of touring before I was discovered on America's Got Talent. So I've actually had people accuse me of cheating and taking the easy way out. I'm like, dude, you have no idea what the hell you're talking about. I did not cheat, and I did not. Look, I did go on America's Got Talent, and that gave me international fame. But I mean, overnight, that was overnight. But listen, I banged it out there. I played bars. I did those bars until 3 a.m. We were the house band for the Texas Gambling Hall and Hotel, you know, for 6 weeks. And we played from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m., you know, setting up and tearing down the equipment. Listen, I've been there. I've been through all of it. And then doing the fair circuit where you're in there and you're playing Powell, Wyoming. and it's 110 degrees outside and you're standing there about to pass out, So yeah, I've been through the whole stuff. And then, I've paid my dues to get here. I mean, most people will never get to this area, but really what happened to me, I had an epiphany moment where I was, for a while, after about 10 years of touring and playing those just those worst venues, and you both look like musicians, so I think you both know what I'm talking about.
For
those
sure.
ones where you're just like, oh God, when is this going to be over? Then I was really just discouraged, and I was thinking, man, do I really want to do this? This is really tough. I mean, this is a tough life. And then I saw a movie called The Jolson Story. And it's about Al Jolson, who was the biggest star in the world in the early 1900s. And in fact, the very first talking movie was Al Jolson. It's called The Jazz Singer. And the very first talkie movie that had actual talking and singing was Al Jolson. And I just saw in this movie the story of his life and the joy that he took from being on stage. And it didn't matter if he was performing for 10 people or 10,000. He had such an exuberance and joy. And then after the show, he'd go to the after party and he'd be like, you want to hear more? And so it was weird because as I'm watching it, suddenly it's like my entire attitude changed of it. And I thought, wait a second. There's a lot of people that have to go sell insurance, and there's a lot of people that have to go to a job, bagging groceries, or not that there's anything wrong with those. And I was a janitor until I was in my 20s. I was a janitor. And I'm thinking, even if nobody's there, and even if I'm stuck in the middle of nowhere, I get to entertain for a living and I get paid and it pays my bills. And I thought, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? How can I not see the upside of this? And it just changed. And suddenly I was joyous about it. So even if it was a horrible situation and there was no crowd and I'm still like, man, I'm going to get a paycheck for this. I don't have to bag groceries. I don't have to mop floors and clean toilets anymore. I get to get up with my puppets and make people laugh. And even if it's one person, I'm still going to get a check, So it kind of changed my entire perspective on it. And so when I turned about 40, I always just assumed there was this weird thing inside that said, I'm going to be rich and famous one day. They're going to discover me and I'm going to get rich and famous. It's going to happen, And when I turned 40, I kind of had one of those epiphany moments where I went, the chances of a 40-year-old ventriloquist ever getting discovered are pretty slim. I doubt that's ever going to happen, but you know what? I'm going to love my life and I'm going to enjoy being an entertainer and a performer. And I did. And then it was when I gave up that everything happened for me. 2 years later, I was 42 and America's Got Talent. I just auditioned thinking that, man, this is going to be great. If I get on one or two episodes, I can put together a killer DVD to sell myself, and I might even be able to double my price at schools, So, and then I win the show, become a headliner in Vegas 2 months later, and never look back. It's quite an amazing story. I mean, I really did live and still living the dream.
Yeah, what was that like? You just basically overnight, right?
Yeah,
you start getting all these followers on social media. You start getting all these calls or emails. Like, how do you know that? Oh, I've just made it. What is
it?
How did it start?
Well, when it's happening, you can't sleep. So I'm on America's Got Talent, and suddenly every single week I realize there are 20 million people a week tuning in. Now they don't have nearly that many now, but at the time there was 20 million people. So on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and then there was 10 million on Saturdays. So they estimated about 30 million people a week would watch America's Got Talent when I was on it. So I would be laying in bed and I would fall asleep, and then I would pop awake and be like, oh my God, I can't believe it's happening. I mean, this is happening, And so I called my voice doctor in Dallas, and I lived in Dallas, Texas. And he said, he's the voice doctor to the stars. In fact, he was Leanne Rimes' voice doctor when she was discovered as a young girl. And he goes, Terry, I've been through this many times. It happens to everybody. And he put me on sleeping pills so I could sleep. Because, man, you're just you're so worked up at the fact that, especially when you're like me, I was in my 40s. So I'd been dreaming of this since I was a kid. And suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, this is actually happening to me, And then, oddly, I learned as a janitor to because we had these horrible situations where it just felt like things, it was unsurmountable, the amount of work we had to do. So I learned to compartmentalize things. So, I would go into a house and it would be like so incredibly dirty. And I'm thinking, okay, where do I start? And I'd say, I'm going to start in that corner. And I would focus on that corner until it was clean. And then I would say, I'm going to start in the kitchen. And I would focus on the kitchen until it was clean. Well, that's exactly how I did my career as an entertainer. So when I was on, of course I was, I wasn't nervous, but I was super excited. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm about to be on TV. But literally the second I stepped out in front of those cameras and those judges, the cameras and judges did not exist. And I was performing to that audience. And it was just like I was at a fair, and it didn't matter. And I'm able to do that. So there was no nerves, and there was no, oh my gosh, I can't believe, it was, and then I would do the performance. And then afterwards I'd be like, holy crap, I can't believe this. I just performed for, 30 million people. And but it's a really interesting experience when it's starting to happen. And then of course I had been dreaming of being a Vegas headliner. Back in like 1987, I saw that Danny Gans had signed a multi-million-dollar a year contract to be the Mirage headliner. And then my brain just clicked and I said, holy cow, if I can be in one place and make millions of dollars and sleep in my own bed, that's where I want to be. So in 1987, I made that my goal. And it only took me 20 years. In 2007, I became a regular headliner in Las Vegas. So 20 years later, and I got to tell you, man, it's the dream. When you get to go and do a show and you have a full house and they're cheering and laughing and the energy is just so up, and then you go and 15 minutes later you're brushing your teeth and getting ready to get in bed. It's like, you don't know, in your own bed, not a hotel, right. In your own bed. There's no words to describe what an amazing thing that is to not have to wear yourself out, because most entertainers, we have to spend a lot of time on the road. Now I go on the road for fun. My wife and I will go, we just got back from Florida. I did 5 shows in Florida and 1 in Atlanta and had a blast. So, but I did that because I wanted to, I don't do it because I have to.
It's hard to sleep in hotel rooms, hotel beds. It's hard for me to sleep. Yeah.
Oh, so hard. I mean, occasionally you get a really nice one, but most of the time you're just up and down. And then of course, you guys know what it's like to wake up at 3 a.m. to pee, and you bump into the wall because you can't remember where the bathroom is because the night before you were in a different hotel.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have to worry about getting up on time and to be somewhere by the next day. And
I got a question.
Flights.
Okay.
Yeah. Why do you want to talk about hotels anymore?
Because it just gives me the willies. We're going to be in one soon. But so as a ventriloquist, is it like, are the puppets like if you're learning to play guitar, you start with a cheap one and you've got your eye on like the really nice, but like how do the puppets go along? I'm sure they got better and better, but is there a market for them? Like where you
yes. And I love that I absolutely love that you just use that analogy of guitars or whatever you're into, because it's exactly the same. If you're a guitar player, you start looking at catalogs and you start going to Guitar Center and looking at those guitars and you start dreaming about, I'm going to own one like that one day, or I'm going to own that one day. Same thing with me. At 10 years old, I bought my first puppet at Sears. It was $10. And it just had a little stick, a string out of the back. So the head didn't move. So I was, the little entrepreneur. So I tore his body apart and I put a milk carton in and I put a stick so that I could turn his head. And my dad gave me like a costume jewelry ring that I could put on the end of it. So I could turn his head and I could do more of a regular performance. And so I started performing at churches and my school, and I would do birthday parties. I even have an ad, hey kids, for this little local Balch Springs, Texas paper. And it would say, hey kids, Terry Fator will perform magic and ventriloquism and balloon animals at your $25. And so I saved my money and I bought my first semi-professional puppet when I was 12. And then on my 18th birthday, I saved my money for 3 years. And my joke is I surprised myself with my first professional puppet on my 18th birthday. So, he's actually still in my act now. He's my cowboy puppet. His name is Walter T. Airedale, but exactly the same. I have such a giant collection of puppets. My poor wife, when are you going to stop buying these stupid puppets? I can't stop, because, and then of course somebody will say, hey, this is a puppet from a famous puppet maker that is no longer with us anymore. Would you like to buy it? I'm like, hell yeah, I would like to buy it, So I have vintage puppets, and I don't have as much. David Copperfield has one of the coolest collection of unbelievable puppets. I went to his, he's got a museum of magic, and it's got one of the coolest puppet rooms I've ever seen. I mean, some of the top puppet makers of history, people that made, Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy. I mean, Charlie McCarthy and Mortimer Snerd, and some of the people. It's quite astounding. But yeah, so it's really similar. I mean, when you get passionate about it, you start dreaming about it as a kid, and then when you get the means, you start, spending every moment trying to figure out how to buy more puppets.
Now, what are the different techniques? I know the puppet you use, you put your hand in the back and whatever. What are the ones that are on the string? Can you do those? What are those called? You know what I'm talking about?
Those are marionettes. I do not do marionettes. Yeah, and a lot of people, that's a Howdy Doody was. I don't know if you even know who Howdy Doody is, but Howdy Doody was a marionette, and that's a really interesting. If you watch The Sound of Music, when they do the Lonely Goat Herd, those are marionettes. So and they stand above and do that. That's not what I do. But like you get the typical vent figure, and that's the term. And people say, "Oh, is it okay to call them dummies?" And I'm like, they don't have feelings. You can call them whatever the hell you want. They don't care. But there are some ventriloquists that are really sticky about that. I'm not sure why, but the typical vent dummy or figure, it's like a carved out of wood. It used to be. Most of mine are carved out of wood, but some of them are now a composite of wood and plastic, and they do a mold and all that stuff. But there's a stick, and then you have triggers that you can actually like I wish I had one of my hard figures here with me so I could show it to you. But you just sit here and you just learn how to make the eyes go back and forth and the eyes close and the eyebrows go up, and you're running just like this. But whereas if you're using a Muppet style, oh hi, yeah, my name is Winston the impersonating turtle. Yeah, this is Winston. Yeah, what are you talking about? We're talking about puppets. Oh, I love puppets. Yeah. Okay, what about, so you notice, what are you doing? No, just hang on, you're sitting. I'm sorry. So anyway, so with this one, it's the Muppet style. Don't show them that. No, hang on. So anyway, so what happens is you put your hand up here, or sometimes there'll be something in the back of the head. There'll be something in the back of the head. So depending on, I feel so violated. So that's basically, and then, but see, the difference is so if you're looking, what do you want me to do? We're going to do some emotions. Okay. So if you're going to be happy, see, and then if you want to be sad, I can't believe that. So as you notice, his eyes don't move. There's nothing. So what I did was he studied the Muppets. I did. Yeah. I studied the Muppets, and I would notice that they can't move. They don't have facial expressions. And it's weird because when I do a show, can I go? Yeah, you can go. So but it's weird. It's weird when I'll do a show and people will say, "Oh my God, I just love Winston the Turtle. His facial expressions are so cute." And I'm like, he doesn't make any facial expressions, but you find that just the tiniest cock of your hand or the way you do something makes him emote. And there's a real, like you were saying, I mean, it's not just picking up a puppet and making it. You actually have to make that puppet come alive. And did he not feel alive when you were just watching him?
Yes.
I mean, it didn't feel like a puppet, did it? So, and that's the hardest thing a ventriloquist does. I mean, you could get away with just moving your mouth. In fact, for all the folks that are watching and listening, go and type in Jim Henson live on like the Johnny Carson show or the Tonight Show, because he would make appearances and he would sit here and talk with Kermit the Frog. "Oh, hi, how you doing?" And he wouldn't even, his lips would be moving. It didn't matter because Kermit was alive on his hand. And so that is much secondary. The lip movement is way secondary to making that puppet come alive. I don't want my lip movement to be a distraction. So I work really hard to make sure my lips don't move.
I think this is the only podcast of ours that I'm going to let my children listen to and watch, because for the first 10 years, or I mean, like even just a few years ago, like my boys are almost 15, but maybe up until they were 12, they bought all the Muppets. And they did what you said. They cut some of them. They had to cut out, and make them. And they made these little videos on YouTube, which they've now privated because they're so embarrassed by them. I wouldn't let them delete it. But
yeah, they're right at the age though to where you go through a phase where it's not cool. Although, just make sure they realize that I make millions of dollars to do this. It's much cooler than it used to be. Trust me. And so So if you're good at it and you work at it, there's not, and also, you the type of humor you do is your own. You can, if you want to be more sophisticated, that's great. I mean, a lot of ventriloquists, they do it for ministry, and they don't really, they don't have any desire to be a headliner in Las Vegas. And that's fine. If you go into, and you're doing children's church and the kids are all 3 and under, they're not going to care if you're a good ventriloquist or not. And if you're doing it for whatever your heart's reason, if you want to teach children or whatever, that's wonderful. I think there's a place for that. And I certainly don't criticize that. I feel like that even if somebody who does that is a colleague of mine, because we both are ventriloquists. But, I know Edgar Bergen was one of the greatest ventriloquists of all time. And if you look him up, his lip movement was absolutely atrocious. Now, it's because he did 20 years on the radio and no one could see his lips. So who cared, Right. And because people always mention that, I'm really, really careful about my lip movement. So I actually, when I'm performing in Vegas and even on the road, I have a monitor set up so I can see myself, because that way I can keep an eye on my lips and make sure my lips aren't moving. And I think that's really, every good ventriloquist needs to do that. And it doesn't cost that much. In fact, it's just in my rider. But it really doesn't cost that much to get it to run a cable to make sure that you're able to get a feed so you can watch yourself. But it really keeps you on your toes when you're doing that.
Does it hurt to hold your mouth that certain way and not move your lips? Does it hurt to do that?
It can. I mean, I've been doing it now for 47 years. So it's a lot easier for me. But yes, when I'm done with a show, my jaw can be sore. And not only that, it causes me to clench my jaw when I sleep. So I wake up and my jaws, I have to wear mouth braces on the top and bottom. I break teeth. And it's because when I'm standing here doing this and I'm singing, and last my love is coming along. When I'm doing that, I'm really having to keep those muscles really, really taut in order to keep the lips from moving. Right. And so it builds up after an hour and a half of it. It builds up so that I'm, when I'm done, it causes me to get knots in my shoulder. So once a week, I get a therapeutic massage to come in and work out the knots in my shoulder and in my
That's a good example
jaws.
Successful ventriloquism sounding better and better the more he talks about it.
The Muppeteers do the same thing. They actually have therapeutic massage that helps with the shoulders and all that. I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you. What?
Wait, did you just say the puppets had massages?
The Muppeteers, the people who perform the Muppets. No, I would not give the puppets a massage. You can't have a massage.
Okay.
I got a quick question.
Wait. It'd be weird if I ask this in a minute, and it's a weird question, but is your tongue moving a lot in there when you're doing that? Yes. In fact, the old joke is, and I'm not the only ventriloquist that has told this. I actually got it from Ron Lucas, who, look him up. He's an incredible ventriloquist. But his thing is, the reason that my wife married me is because she heard that I had a highly trained tongue. And then the secondary joke is, but she complains my lips don't move enough.
Well done. Hey, can you do your own voice without moving your lips?
Absolutely, I can do my own voice without moving my lips. So it's a little more difficult. It's easier to do a voice like this, or to, but one thing you have to practice. If you want to sit here and talk without moving your lips, you just have to keep the mouth closed, and your tongue is literally doing all the work. Sounds dirty, but it's not. The tongue has to recreate everything your lips would normally do. So the B's, P's, M's, F's, V's, they're all the tongue. And so I'm gonna give you a quick little lesson. Okay. The way to do it is, now they say to substitute like T's for P's and D's for B's. So you'd say the doy daughter desket doll. So if you say that doesn't sound like the doy daughter desket doll, right? Mm-hmm. So what I learned how to do, and I actually came up with this, but every really good ventriloquist uses this technique. And I developed it on my own, but I'm not the only one who uses it. You put the tip of your tongue, and you're both going to try it, I know it. Mm-hmm. You put the tip of your tongue against the back of your top front teeth. And then it's really how you just have to learn how to finesse it. So instead of the doy daughter desket doll, you would say the doy daughter desket doll. So
it's that easy.
But you have to have it. You have to have a little bit of space so that something can escape. And honestly, I should not be able to make the tones that I do, because like when I was just singing, and last my love is coming along. We don't know why I'm able to do that tone through that little teeny crack in my mouth. It doesn't make sense. In fact, my voice doctor in Dallas the Doctor of the Stars, Wayne Kirkham. He says what I do is physically impossible. Rolling Stone magazine asked him what the weirdest and the most strange case he has, and he said Terry Fator, because what he does is physically impossible, and I can't figure out how he does it. So, I mean, I'm not bragging. It's just I don't have an answer for why. I shouldn't. I break all the rules.
I'm going to practice. I'm going to be a ventriloquist now.
Yeah, it'd be funny if you did an interview with that. Have you ever done that in an interview and just not moved your mouth but answered questions?
Wait.
Oh, it's way too hard. I would be so exhausted by the end of it. It's because I have to really, concentrate when I'm not moving my lips. You have to really think about it, and then you have to keep the jaw very, very still. And so it tenses up the muscles in your jaw. And so it's much, much, much more difficult. I only talk without moving my lips when I have to.
Did you drive your parents crazy when you were a kid? Did you drive them crazy?
Oh yeah. But it wasn't just the ventriloquism. It was, I could impersonate stuff. I mean, it's like, we would be going through Kmart, and there would be a blue light special, and the lady would go, "There's a blue light special on boys' pants," and I'd be like, "There's a blue light special on boys' pants." I would be like, and I would do it over and over and over and over. And so, yes, I drove them nuts.
Are you familiar with a dude named Wes Harrison? This is just popped into my head. He used to do sound effects. I remember my grandfather had a record. Anyway, never mind.
The name sounds familiar. I bet I
too.
am. Yeah, I bet I am. But remember the guy from Police Academy? I don't remember his name, but the black guy from Police Academy, amazing. And I mean, what a surreal life I've had, because all the people, many of the people that I just idolized as a kid. Jerry Lewis came to my show, and literally in the middle of my show, he stands up and he looks at the crowd and he goes, "That man is a genius," and it's like, I mean, who gets that to happen to them? Rich Little has been to my show, and look up Rich Little, one of the greatest, Frank Caliendo is a friend of mine. So all these incredible like stars that I grew up, and I didn't, Frank and I are similar to the same age, but I loved watching him when he was on Mad TV and all that stuff. And so to become friends with these people and to have people like Rich Little and Jerry Lewis compliment you, it's a surreal life. It's really crazy.
Is there a crew, like an inside crew of you guys? There's very few people that do this kind of thing. Do you guys, is there like a secret cabal or anything? You guys hang out a bunch together?
Well, there's a ventriloquist convention in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh, wow.
And I've been several times, and there's usually about 500 to 600 people from all over the world. So it's not a small, teeny tiny community, but and there are more, trust me, there are more ventriloquists popping up all the time, because you've got Jeff Dunham, who's amazing, and who has been on a lot of national stuff and really brought an incredible audience to ventriloquism. And then of course, when I won America's Got Talent, it really, and then became a headliner in Vegas, it changed the perception of ventriloquism is for kids. And so did Jeff Dunham, but see, he does more dirty stuff. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. It's just I do. Right. I tap dance on the line. So you could bring your kids, and I will tell jokes that only you will understand. And the kids will be like, "What does that mean, mommy?" But I don't go straight out and say dirty words and just flat out tell dirty jokes. I don't do that. And not that I'm against it. It's just that's who I am. That's the kind of entertainer I am.
Yeah.
That sounds like a wild convention.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take some mushrooms.
It's oh gosh, if you take mushrooms, oh Lord, you don't even have to take. But you're gonna think you took mushrooms if you go to the ventriloquist convention. It's fun though. It really is fun. I've been 3 or 4 times, and it's always fun. But I'm so busy. I can't. It's too hard for me to take the time off right now, because I'm kind of in the middle of the height of my career. So I'll wait until things kind of slow down, and then I'll start going regularly.
You're doing pretty well. Maybe you should make a documentary about that for us to watch. There needs to be a
documentary
documentary at that convention. I'd watch it.
Yeah, that would be kind of fun. I'll talk to some people about that. That'd be kind of cool.
Are you good at beatboxing?
I'm terrible at beatboxing. No, I can't beatbox at all. No, I probably could if I tried, but I've never even tried.
Yeah, if you give it like 10 minutes, I bet you got it.
Isn't that funny? We're talking about all this stuff like you should be able to do it, but it's all such a weird, different skill set. Like beatboxing versus making sound effects versus doing voices without moving your mouth. It's all seems like it should be the same thing, but it's completely different.
Yeah, it is, and it's similar in a way. Well, like you said, ventriloquism is almost a form of magic. It's an illusion. So it's where me and David Copperfield have something in common in the fact that we both make you believe something that's not really happening. It's really a completely different skill set. And I know David Copperfield has seen my show, and he really appreciates my what I do for the craft, you know. And I think any ventriloquist who saw me would really appreciate, you know, I really bring a lot of different things to the craft that I've really never seen anybody else. I take puppeteering from the Muppets. You know, a lot of times the ventriloquists might be incredible, but their puppeteering is not that great. You know, I take comedy from the great comedy stars. You know, I make sure. In fact, my comedy writers are some of the best comedy writers in the business. My main writer, John Max, he was one of the top writers for the Jay Leno show for the entire time he was on TV. He writes the Oscars, he writes the Emmys. He's really, so I have the top comedy writer. So I take that and make sure that my comedy is top notch. So you're going to come to the show. And I hear this all the time. People are like, my wife drugged me to your show. I didn't want to say, I don't want to see any puppets. What the hell? And they're like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. Well, it's because you don't really, a lot of people think of, you know, puppets are going to be, you know, puppets, you know, Barney and stuff for little kids.
Yeah. Okay. So before I let you go, thank you so much for doing this with us again. But I want to ask you, what is your own personal Papa Willie story? My grandpa, Willie Nelson. Have you, you know, what's your own personal Papa Willie story? If you have one, or if not, that's fine too.
Well, you know, the real thing for me is that moment that I was 3 years old. I did not get encouragement. My mom encouraged me. My dad did not. My dad, nothing I ever did was good enough for him. So I guess it's kind of a negative that turned into a positive. But that moment when I realized I wanted to be an entertainer when I was about 3, that changed my life. And we all have that. If you're an entertainer, I've heard psychiatrists say that there is a defining moment that makes you want to be an entertainer. That was for me. But I think mine is kind of a reverse. It's not a positive where, I had my dad say, son, you can be anything. My dad basically said, you'll never amount to anything. And the one story that really reiterates that, I had this, my first puppet, I had turned him into a cowboy. So I got him on my 18th birthday, and I think I may have been 21 when I finally settled in. He was going to be Walter T. Airedale. He's going to be a cowboy. And then I told my dad, I said, I can make him yodel. And I had never yodeled. I didn't know how to yodel. So my dad, he says, nope, can't. If you can't yodel, you can't learn how. It's impossible to learn how to yodel, so you just don't even try. So I went and bought a Roy Rogers album back in the day when we had big records, you know, and I listened to it, and I spent an entire year listening to it and learning and working, and I learned how to yodel. I didn't tell my dad this. So my dad came and saw me perform about a year in, and my puppet gets up and goes, and my dad never said a word about it. Never said, oh, I can't, you good job. You know, so for me, my Papa Willie story would be just every time my dad told me I couldn't, I said, oh, really? So I'll show you I can, you know? Yeah. And interestingly, we had a falling out in about 2000, the year 2000. We had a falling out, and I never saw him again, and he passed away before, and I never got any encouragement from him. He never told me he was proud of me. But when they were going through his, he had a storage shed filled with stuff, and my cousin called me on the phone, and he said, I found a scrapbook of all that had articles about you being on America's Got Talent, and all of articles in major magazines, People Magazine and the Inquirer and all this stuff. And so, and then he said, and then I talked to some people, and they said he bragged to everybody that you were his son. So I never got to have that. But I actually, when it happened, when I got this phone call, my wife was sitting next to me, and I just burst into tears. And I said, he was proud of me, you know, kind of tearing up now. You know, he was proud of me. He never said it, and I never got to hear it from him. But knowing that my dad was proud of me, that was a big moment.
That means a lot.
Yeah, and you kind of got to hear it because of just the scrapbook.
Exactly. But, you know, interestingly, there was this kind of heaviness over me thinking, my dad I never got the approval. We know that's something deep in us. We need that. We need our parents to approve of us. And then when I got a phone call from Oprah's people back maybe 2009, and they said, or maybe 2010, and they said Simon Cowell is doing a show on the most talented people he's ever run across in his world travels, and he's listed you as one of the top 2. And he said, would you be on the show? And so I get on the show, and he flat out says, this man is one of the most talented people I've ever seen anywhere in the world. He does things I can't even begin to comprehend. And it was weird. There was something in me, in my heart, that just like lifted, because it was like, well, my dad didn't think I was talented, but Simon Cowell said I was one of the most talented people in the world. So I think I'm okay, you know?
Yeah,
so it was a really weird kind of one of those moments, very, really a healing moment for me.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Dude, thanks for doing this. This has been
thanks,
fascinating.
Terry. Yeah.
I knew it would be, but I
thank
had so
you.
many questions, and thank you for answering a lot of them.
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for asking. This was I love talking about this stuff, and I know people are interested in it, and I hope a lot of people out there are going to start practicing ventriloquism.
There you go. And if you ever get bored and want to get out and have fun and go do a show here in Nashville, let us know, and we'll hook you up while you're here.
Oh man, I'm there. We're talking about it, so I should be there hopefully in the next year or 2.
Fantastic. Let us know, man.
Well, I'll look out for you
Thanks,
in a
y'all.
non-stalkery way, and we'll reach out. Cool. Thank you.
Okay, please do.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Terry Fator is my favorite comedian. Yeah, mine too. He was a good time. Interesting. Very strange path that the ventriloquist takes in life. Anyway, enjoy your groceries.
Don't be an asshole.
I know your mama's name.
Enjoy your cigarette.